On the serene banks of the Raritan Bay, just south of New York Harbor, sits one of the oldest houses on the Jersey Shore. With its roots dating as far back as 1663, this historic landmark has withstood its share of history, and, if the legends are true, may have played a valuable role for the Patriots during the Revolutionary War. The legends and mysteries only start there though, as the house has garnered the reputation for being one of the most haunted places on the eastern seaboard. Although currently named the Seabrook Wilson House, this building is more widely known to locals as the Spy House. By the days of the Revolutionary War, the house became a tavern and inn that would play host to many guests ranging from colonists to British soldiers. Many believed that the colonists would spy on the naval operations of the British in New York Harbor, which could be easily monitored from the house. Another legend says the widow Seabrook, who ran the tavern, would listen to British military plans from many hidden passages throughout the house. Then, after gaining the British intelligence, she would swiftly relay their secrets to the Patriots. Once the British realized the spying, attempts to burn the house were made, but none would be successful. The Spy House was originally built as a cabin in 1663 by Thomas Whitlock. However, the home would become the residence of the Seabrook family. Additions were made throughout the years, and in 1855, the house became home to a preacher named William Wilson. He lived there with his wife, Mary Seabrook, until the 1890s. It wasn't until the 1960s that efforts were made to preserve the house, and in 1974, it was officially given historic status and placed on the National Register of Historic Places. The legends and stories of the house's past and ghostly activity began to swirl when it became a museum that would pay tribute to the history and culture of the Bayshore community. Some reports have documented the number of spirits that reside in the house as high as 23. These alleged hauntings have occurred not only inside the house, but on the grounds as well. Legends of ghost pirates, phantom British troops, and apparitions of playful children dressed in 19th century era clothing are just a few of the house's supposed spirit inhabitants. Jane Doherty was a guide for the ghost tours of the Spy House. Throughout her time as tour guide, she has heard several claims from visitors about supernatural activity, as well as having her own strange experiences in the house.
What draws people to this house? I think basically in the beginning, just the fact that it's the Spy House. That's intriguing enough because it's history having to do with actual spying going on during the Revolutionary War. And then also the history of the pirates in the area that used to come to these waters and actually also come here. So it was not just a tavern, but it was an inn, and at one time it also was a bordello. So it has a unique kind of history. It is the oldest structure along the Jersey Shore. So it is the oldest house, and I think that is too. And of course, the ghosts, the many ghosts that exist here, because it is a place that people have experiences, and that is what makes it come alive, and people want to visit it because it is filled with so much history, so many ghosts, and so many opportunities of having a ghost experience. Gertrude Neidlinger was the person who started this museum with her brother. At the time when it was going to be raised, she went around and fought to have it saved and actually rented it and made it into a museum. Otherwise, this lovely structure would have been torn down many years ago, and we would not have preserved the history of the place. It was the love of her life. She put it together over the years, and anybody who ever came to the museum would certainly remember Gertrude, the lovely person that she was that made it all happen.
They used to have seances over there. Miss Nylinger was a part of them until she passed. I used to give tours at the Spy House when I was younger. I used to help Miss Nylinger out. I haven't been in the house since they took all the museum artifacts out of it. But personally, I think she's kind of, her spirit's over there too. Even though she didn't grow up there, but she loved that place. It was her life for many, 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 many years. She really, you know, she was a big part of that place over there.
Okay, in this room, as you come in the door, the most activity occurred in that area there that I'll be going to in a minute. Right here were desks that the curators used to sit at, and there was not much activity here. But as you went into this area, you would have activity. What it was infamous for is there used to be a potbelly stove over there, and Thomas Whitlock, that's who we felt it was, one of the original owners of the house, you would hear him clanging on the potbelly stove at times. Tom was notorious for going home with people. He absolutely loved people coming into his home. And what would happen is I would warn people not to invite him home, because if you do, he will.
There was a time when I was here, and I was actually on the phone with my grandmother, and my mom had called to see when I was going to come home. So I was on one phone, my grandmother had the other phone on, and there were only two phones in the house. And all of a sudden, this man's voice interrupted our conversation. And we didn't know who it was. We thought maybe we got mixed lines with the neighbor, so we said, "Who are you? You know, what's going on?" And the man said his name was Tom, and that he lived across the street. Well, we knew there was no Tom here, there was no Tom there, there was no Toms around. And he was saying that he was very adamant that he lived across the street, and, you know, he could see our house, and then he told us that he had died across the street. So now we're saying, okay, so now we must be talking to someone in the Spy House. The other thing I can distinctly remember was he didn't speak like we speak today. He spoke in an old English accent. So that was another thing that, you know, the spirits that were over there, that's from the time that they passed.
Okay, in this particular area here, what we have is about where I'm standing now, there would be a man that would come out of the men's room wearing a black cloth, a cape, and he would just walk through. Sometimes they would see him walk right through the wall. This happened on a number of occasions, and people would also see him outside. It is possible that this also was Thomas Whitlock. This is the window where Abigail would be seen standing. Sometimes when you're in the house, but most of the reports have been from outside the house, where they would see a woman staring out to sea. And then you would see it move away, and the house would be completely empty. It's late at night. There's no one in here. When I was here for the first time, I came with the Shoppers Channel doing a piece on ghosts, and this is where I took them. I had never been here. They wanted a fresh place that I hadn't been to yet. So I took my mother with me just to take a ride for the day, and I left her in the car. So I came in here, and while we were looking for ghosts, apparently my mother had an experience outside. And this is what happened. I went out there, and she told me that she got out of the car because she saw a woman staring out to the sea. And she immediately started to pray for her because she thought that she was going to commit suicide. So I looked at my mother and I said, "Mama, what did she look like?" And she described her as having old-fashioned clothing. She had on a long black skirt. She had on a red blouse with billowy sleeves and a little pattern to it. Her hair was tied back in a bow, and then she had a bonnet on her head. Now I said to my mother, "That's Abigail. That is where Abigail has been seen, out to sea, in here." And what we feel had happened is her husband went to sea and he never returned. He died. Ultimately, she died. And that's the last thing that she would remember, is waiting for her husband to return from the sea. And that's why you would have her always looking out to the sea, because she's waiting for him. But this is probably the most reported spirit activity in the house. This usually is where Robert the pirate used to stay, and he would hide behind this wall at one time, but I could always count on Robert being here when I did the tours, and people would often feel him when they would come into the house, you know, in this hallway. He was the first mate to Captain Morgan. You would also hear at times someone walking in the hallway, and it sounded almost as though it was a peg leg. We felt that was Captain Morgan. Captain Morgan, he could be a little brusque at times, as far as his personality was still rough. So there were times that you could almost hear some sort of like fighting going on, or some words that, like of an argument. If you got very quiet and you listened very intently, you could hear some kind of discourse going on. At one time also, we've had people go by this window and actually see a figure standing and then move away when the place was closed totally. No one was in here at night.
On the outside of the building, I guess would be the very east end of the building, on the top floor again, we were always told, our family from Miss Nylander, that there was a captain of a ship that would sometimes appear in the window. And we didn't believe it, even though other things have happened to us. And we used to go over there probably every weekend looking into this window. And one weekend we went over there, my uncle and I, he's 6 years older than I am. We looked up in the window and we saw not a clear image, but you could see a smoky outline of a man. Pretty interesting. He hung around, I think there were 3 or 4 of us that actually witnessed that one, and he hung around a good half hour, and then we had a bunch of friends over here, and you know, as soon as everybody started going over there, he just kind of like dissipated. There's another room in the north end of the house, in the back, that overlooks the water, upstairs again. And she used to have that room with old, authentic letters from George Washington, some other letters of presidents that she had found. It was a nautical room, that room, and there were all little tiny rectangle pieces of carpet on the floor that when kids would come for a tour, they would sit on the carpet and listen to the story. So I went in there again by myself, nobody's around, and the whole room just started, the outside of the room just started spinning on me. It was just so weird. And I went over to the window and I was looking outside, and I remember seeing an image of an old ship out in the water. And as I went to open the window, because we weren't supposed to, I tried to open the window, the ship disappeared, the room stopped spinning.
One of the tours, what we had is people were, you know, going around and peeking in the windows, and someone actually saw a man with a bandana tied around his head, reaching as though he's cooking, turns around and he looks at them, gives them a dirty look, and then he dissipates. And this would be one of the pirates. We have Peter, who liked to go around playing with all the buttons. And you would have people's cameras, buttons would be changed. There was one incident when somebody's shoelaces were tied. And they went to leave the house, they were standing out there, and they went to walk and their shoelaces were tied. We could only assume that that was Peter, because he liked to play games like that. I know historically we've had children who've died in the house here from high fevers. That's what we suspect are the children spirits that we see outside, and when we go outside I'll point that out to you where they have been seen. And we've always, Gertrude and I always suspected they were the children that once lived in the house.
This is the area where children have been seen playing, usually going in a circle. I've seen them myself, and many have over the years, because there's a girl, there's 2 boys. The little boys are dressed with the short pants, the knickers, and the knee socks. And the little girl, I would say, was somewhere around 7 or 8 years old. The boys were younger. And she had on like the long baloney curls and a long dress. You can tell it was like a bow, very old-fashioned clothing. And you could often hear them giggling. The first time I saw them, I was in the house, it was about midnight, and I was looking from the window outside, and I could see the children playing, and I could hear them giggling. My first reaction was, oh my God, what terrible parents in the area, because how could these children be out playing by the water at midnight at the end of November with no coats on? As I looked closer, I could see that their clothing was unusual. And I was just watching them and listening to them, and then all of a sudden all 3 of them dissipated. These are the spirits of the children. Many, many recordings of sightings of seeing them outside playing at night.
What used to happen is I could always count on somewhere on my tour someone would come in here and get sick. They hated this room. I used to keep them in here just for a few minutes because I would have on my tour someone would inevitably vomit in this room. It would disrupt everything because they would get so sick and couldn't understand what it is. This particular area here where you have the fireplace, what used to go on here is you would see a woman dressed in colonial clothing. And you could see her go over to the, there used to be a pot in there, and she would be tending to the pot, and then you would see her walk back this way and walk back and forth, just back and forth. Now, she did not have a consciousness, not like Tom, who knew we were here. She was just part of the haunting phenomenon, caught in that time period where she's just doing the last thing she did, it's her chores. There used to be a sewing machine here, which at times we would find on, and we could be in the room. And even when I'm doing a tour, there was a couple of times where you would actually see the sewing machine going. A few people would scream. This little closet was part of what was a secret hiding place at the time of the Revolutionary War, where the colonists could hide up here and peek downstairs in the tavern and watch what was going on and hear the conversation of the British so that they could get it to their men to then be able to attack them. In this particular area here, what we used to have is the Reverend Wilson oftentimes would be seen in his garb, and people would also see in the front, they would see figures, you know, in this room. One particular incident that happened is, it centered around children a lot, babies, because the one, I think it was Penelope, who died childless, and so she would be still hanging around in this room. And it was one incident when I had somebody on the tour come in with a baby in her arms, and the baby was actually lifted out of her arms. And that would happen frequently with people who came in here with children in their arms. So that was Penelope trying to hold a baby, which was something that she never had. So she would have a consciousness. She would know that people, that we were present. There used to also be a dresser that was there with a very odd looking mirror, and there was a lot of times people would take pictures and also see an image around that dresser that was there. And it also had an uncomfortable feeling. Those are the only 2 places in the house that gave an uncomfortable feeling, was near that dresser and in that room. The rest of the house was fine. Nobody reacted in a negative way.
The house does have an extensive history that dates back to the early days of America. Whether it's truly haunted by ghosts or just by a rich history is something that will always be up for debate. But one thing is certain, the Spy House is a historic treasure that will always be a place that intrigues everyone, from local historians to ghost hunters. The Spy House at Port Monmouth, New Jersey is one of the oldest remaining structures on the Jersey Shore. The house's historic past spans over 4 centuries and has captivated the imagination of many throughout the years. However, it's the mysteries surrounding the legends of the paranormal that have become synonymous with the Spy House. But are these legends true, or are these haunted house stories just tall tales? Reports of supernatural activity began to surface when the house opened to the public as a museum. Soon, both staff and visitors claimed to experience strange phenomena. Ghost tours of the Spy House were added, and it became a popular destination for tourists, often selling out on a nightly basis. Whether these ghost stories were fictitious tales is something that may just remain another mystery harbored by the Spy House. The Paranormal Rangers ventured out to see if they could answer any of the questions surrounding the haunted history of the Spy House. Although access for an indoor investigation was unavailable, the Paranormal Rangers explored the grounds, which seemed to have as much activity as the house itself.
This is the area where children have been seen playing, usually going in a circle. I've seen them myself, and many have over the years, because there's a girl, there's two boys. The little boys are dressed with the short pants, the knickers, and the knee socks. And the little girl, I would say, was somewhere around 7 or 8 years old. The boys were younger. And she had on like the long baloney curls and a long dress. You could tell it was like a bow, very old-fashioned clothing. And you could often hear them giggling. The first time I saw them, I was in the house, it was about midnight, and I was looking from the window outside, and I could see the children playing, and I could hear them giggling.
The Paranormal Rangers investigated the area to see if any evidence of the spirit children could be captured.
Is there anybody here that can come over and talk to me? Come on, kids. Run right in front of me. That'd be amazing. I felt something touch my hand. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Take a few photographs right here. Let's see if anybody shows up.
They reviewed audio, night vision video, and full spectrum media, but were unable to find any evidence of the spirit children during this investigation. With the investigation nearing an end, the Paranormal Rangers set up in one more spot. The group decided to do an EVP session and ask questions about the former curator who passed away in 1998. While in its heyday, Gertrude Neidlinger was the heart and soul of the spy house, and many think that the love she had for her former job extends from beyond the grave.
They used to have seances over there. Miss Neidlinger was a part of them until she passed. I used to give tours at the spy house when I was younger. I used to help Miss Neidlinger out. I haven't been in the house since they took all the museum artifacts out of it. But personally, I think she's kind of, her spirit's over there too. Even though she didn't grow up there, but she loved that place. It was her life for many, 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 many years. She really, you know, she was a big part of that place over there.
Gertrude used to run exhibits here, and she was really devoted to keeping the museum in a respectable state and made it a wonderful place for like children of schools to visit. And I heard from someone who actually may have lived across the street that she thinks that you're still here. And if you are still here, is there any way that you could say hello or anything that you'd like to let us know? Is there any way that you could say hello or anything that you'd like to let us know? Is there any way that you could say hello?
Could this be the voice of Gertrude? Or could this be another spirit confirming that she is still at the place where she displayed her passion for history, learning, and adventure?
Gertrude Neidlinger was the person who started this museum with her brother. At the time when it was going to be raised, she went around and fought to have it saved and actually rented it and made it into a museum. Otherwise, this lovely structure would have been torn down many years ago and we would not have preserved the history of the place. It was the love of her life. She put it together over the years, and anybody who ever came to the museum would certainly remember Gertrude, the lovely person that she was that made it all happen.